There we go. How can you have a relationship with a narcissistic, emotionally immature parent?
What an excellent
Let's get it all out right now.
You've got me hooked. I want to know.
Welcome to Momversations on the Win-Win Women platform. We are your hosts. I'm Natasha.
I'm Reagan.
And
our goal with the Momversation is to enrich motherhood and help us all keep calm and mom on.
The title of today's Momversation is No Room in Their Heart for You. Based on the theme of being raised by narcissistic and emotionally immature parents.
We'll be discussing how you can navigate and push forward in your relationship with a narcissistic parent for the first half hour. And then we'll invite you to unmute and join the Momversation too.
Yes, feel free to share your input, ask any questions, just take advantage of all these interactive features on this unique platform where women can care, connect, and collaborate.
So yes, let's go back to that hook question. How can we have a relationship with an emotionally immature parent?
It's a big one. We touched on this a little bit over the past couple of weeks, especially in that example that you gave of your relationship with your dad. But if we want to get really specific on how to navigate this kind of relationship, we have to know how to identify a narcissist or an emotionally immature parent. And for the purposes of today, those two labels are going to be used interchangeably.
Okay.
But narcissists are all emotionally immature, whereas not all emotionally immature people are narcissists.
Okay.
And we'll get a little bit more into that too. But to start, I wanted to share off a quote from, I didn't even bring the book in here with me.
We usually have a vision.
Okay, I want to share a quote from the book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson. She is a psychologist. And this one quote just really stood out to me. I think it was even just in the introduction. Like you read the introduction and your life will be changed and your relationship will be changed. And you haven't even gotten to the whole book. But she says, mutual emotional responsiveness is the single most essential ingredient of human relationships. So she is the author of Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Okay.
Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah, that's a tongue twister.
But I've honestly been surprised by how many of my friends even have talked to me about having this issue with their parents. Specifically, my best friend, her mother is a full-blown narcissist. Like they know this, but she's also a therapist.
At the same time?
At the same time.
Wow.
So it's kind of weird, but it is very common. And in this book, I'm not going to say it again because that's a long title.
Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Thank you. She spells out in this book how to recognize an emotionally immature parent. So if you wouldn't mind just reading a few of those distinguishers and see if any of these sound familiar to you, and we'll get a little bit more into them in situationals.
Okay, so I might be an adult child of an emotionally immature parent if my parent often overreacts to relatively minor things. If my parent doesn't express much empathy or emotional awareness, when it comes to emotional closeness and feelings, my parent seems uncomfortable and just doesn't go there.
I love how you're just adding so much drama to this.
I love it. Yeah, my kids are all in theater.
Amazing. I see where they go.
There we go. Yeah. My parent is often irritated by individual differences or different points of view. Maybe I can look back to when I was growing up and see that my parent used me as a confidant, but they were not willing to be a confidant for me. Right. Conversations with my parent will largely just be about my parents' interests. Mm-hmm. if I try to share a success with a parent, my emotionally immature parent, it's actually really deflating because they just don't seem to care that I had that success. Facts, logic, just they're no match for my parents' opinions, which are, are better than facts and logic.
I'm having so many flashbacks.
Oh dear.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
An emotionally immature parent will not have the ability to be self-reflective, and they're incapable really of seeing their role in a problem.
Mm-hmm.
An emotionally immature parent has favorites, gives attention to an older, younger sibling rather than trying to love everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And guilt trips are part of emotionally immature parenting. Is huge, just trying to guilt trip me into doing what they want me to do.
Do you have experience with any of these?
So the terrifying thing to me is that when you ask that question, my brain like screams out, yes, Reagan, you have experience because you, Reagan, you do these things sometimes. So like when my 4-year-old has been drawing and brings me like the 17th rendition of her drawing that day.
Yeah.
And I'm like barely noticing, nodding, and I'm on the phone and I'm dealing with something else. And so I don't, that's the situation of not glorifying in her success, but really though, I want to like share that sensation of like, wow, I must be a narcissist.
Right. I think we've all done that.
Yeah, these are very human characteristics. They're rooted in self-survival techniques.
Right.
A lot of them are. And so the capability to act this way is like within each one of us. Mm-hmm. It's just they're at the root of our beings because we all need to survive. Right. And so sometimes we build these techniques, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I think that what makes it different is seeing it be consistent and repetitive.
Yeah.
And I would say also meeting more than 4 or 5 or 6 of these. Right. How many bullet points was that? Probably like 12. And so if you have 1 or 2 of these and you can see that happening in your life, it might not mean you're entirely emotionally immature,
right?
But
it's in the moment.
Yes,
you're having a reactive moment,
right?
I think you definitely hit on a great point there because, like we said earlier, not all emotionally immature parents are narcissistic, but all narcissists are emotionally immature. So there is a difference there, and it's like you said, it's between having a reactive moment and consistently neglecting your child,
right?
Their feelings, their needs.
Keyword there, yeah.
Right. And I've mentioned that I no longer have a relationship with my mother, who I recognize not only as emotionally immature, but she is a full-blown narcissist. And that's not just my opinion. She's destroyed every single relationship she's had with friends and family, and especially me and my brother. I'm going to mention a couple examples, okay, as to what an emotionally immature parent looked like in my life. Not to start a pity party. Like, I don't want that. And I am mentally healthy enough to talk about it now. And so without crying, I might add. But I wouldn't have been able to do this a couple years ago, but now I'm in a place where I can share my experience, and I don't want like, oh, were you sad? I know you're going to do it, and that's okay. But just to kind of be on the lookout, maybe you've also encountered something similar to this in your childhood or with your emotionally immature parent. But my brother and I, he's 11 months younger than me. We were like required to clean the house every single day after school. whether we had jobs or not. We weren't allowed to talk to my mom after she came home from work. Like, just no, we weren't allowed to talk at all. To this day, neither of us can recall a single moment where she offered to help us with something like homework, or like I was having problems with my boyfriend, or I wanted to learn to do this, or I wanted to register for this class. Like there was, my brother and I actually just had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, like, and he told me without me asking him, he's like, I cannot think of a single moment where she ever offered to help me with anything.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, that makes sense, because neither can I. But just things like that. And this is one kind of extreme example where my brother a couple years ago had to get his teeth worked on. He had so many dental problems, and he's military. And so he went in to get an x-ray because they were offering, they cover all their dental care.
Yeah.
They take care of all their dental care. And so he finally went in and did it, and they x-rayed him, and they're like, did you know that you have like a surgical screw in your cheekbone? And he's like, what are you talking about? And they show him on the x-ray, he has a surgical screw in his cheekbone holding his cheekbone together. And he asked me about it, and I'm like, I have no idea what happened. He doesn't remember it. In fact, we've both we've blocked out a lot of things from our childhood. It's a survival technique. It's your brain's trauma response. And he can't remember where this screw came from.
That's crazy.
So the only person who can tell him what happened is my mom. But when he asked her, she immediately shut him down. She does not want to talk about it. She will not give him any answers. And we were physically abused as kids by my stepdad for quite a while. And so now all we can assume is that something happened to his cheekbone during an episode. And he's left with this surgical screw in his face. So like I said, I'm mentioning these things to kind of give you a little bit more fullness of an emotionally immature parent, rather than like, I can't believe this happened to you. But like I said, she's destroyed every single relationship. And now I kind of feel like she's reaping all the rewards, because my brother and I don't want anything to do with her. My stepdad passed away a couple years ago, and she doesn't really have anybody else right now. But I tried to help her for a long time. I tried to help her get her out of her marriage, her abusive marriage. I offered to pay for her divorce. I offered to finish my basement so she could live there. I offered to help her start a photography business. She just didn't want any of that. And I convinced myself that if she could just be happier, then she would be a better person. But it doesn't actually work out that way, because no matter what I did, the constant criticism kept coming up. She ignored all of the boundaries I had set, even after I was married and had kids of my own. And it was just those incessant little demands of hers, like, you're gonna do this now for me, but no, nothing in return, kind of relationship. And it wasn't until I read The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents
Good job.
that I realized I wasn't the only one. There's dozens of stories in this book where I could point out and say, I went through that, and it just felt so reassuring.
To know that you're not the only one, and to make that connection that no matter what you do, offer to do, anything that you're not going to earn her love, you're not going to somehow convince her to love you. It is, unfortunately, narcissistic personality disorder is one of those very strongholds in a person. So I am heartbroken for you.
Well, thank you.
But I'm at the same time, your ability to come to terms with the situation, accept that limitation of her capability to love, and you are definitely rising above.
I try.
So if any of this kind of difficulties are kind of screaming out to you that this is something you've been through, I hope that you'll be able to notice it's the long term, it's repetitive, it's several of the dozen behaviors that we've mentioned, but that there's hope. And even if part of that hope includes ending the relationship for the time being, because you said you no longer have a relationship with your mother at this point. And I really don't have much of a relationship with my father, despite little attempts over the years.
Right.
But let's talk about what it took for each of us to get to this point where we're obviously happier and better off now than
But it's hard
when we were trying to endure interactions with these people. So
these people, make it sound more villainous. These people.
My dad actually left when I was 5, so I didn't feel like I knew him very well at all. But my little girl, princess heart, always had this dad-sized void, and I always harbored this secret hope that he would come back and that somehow my parents would figure things out. So oddly, if I met somebody who had known my dad, they would just be like, "Oh, I was so sad what happened because he was such a nice guy." And I just thought, what nice guys leave their wives with 5 kids to, like, he didn't pay child support. He was, he'll still live. He still lived in our city.
Wow.
But was evading.
I was gonna say, did he make
authority.
attempts to see you?
No, generally. And every once in a while, my mom would like try to kind of force him to be involved in our lives, but he either wouldn't show up or showed up really late or things like that. Or showed up with a woman, and we were all just kind of like,
that's the best.
So
by the best, I mean the worst.
When I was 16, I decided to confront him and just, try to match up his story with what my mom had said. My mom was always really kind of vague about how, he's just really selfish or whatever, but he refused to get a real job. He was always trying to evade police and authority.
Having the child support taken out.
Yeah, things like that. So, but his answer was really quite specific. He said, "Your mom was too fat and she didn't give me enough sex."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he said that to a 16-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
So
ew.
It was those answers that formulated in my mind what selfishness really meant and helped, gave me like a baseline, I guess, of what a narcissist is really like. And from there, I was able to really move forward with much clearer understanding.
Wow.
To some degree, I even count myself blessed and grateful that he removed himself from my life for the most part. Obviously, I was continually affected by his lack of child support, which in turn meant the lack of a mom because she had to leave and go make money. I don't mean leave the family. I mean, leave our household. She couldn't be a mom in the way she wanted to. And of course, she was always stressed out, and single motherhood just isn't fun. So.
No. And for you women who do it, I admire you, because my husband has been going back into the office this week and
stepped into the office,
and I hate
it. Not like
he's been home for 3 years. I hate that he had to leave. On one hand, I'm so glad that you got the answer, like that he just came right out and said the answer, so you could make that choice.
It's interesting because he's really not an honest man in so many other ways in his life. He's like a pathological liar, but I believed him when he told me those straightforward answers.
On the other hand, like, that just hurts. That hurts my heart. That just made me want to vomit. Just something so trivial that can destroy a family and a marriage. Well, you'd ask like what I've learned since that. I've learned that emotionally immature parents or narcissists, they just really want you to show concern for them, but they will not show concern for you.
It's not reciprocal.
Kind of like the interest. Like, they want you to know what they've been up to, but they don't want to know what you've been up to. They don't care.
Yeah, they can't bother with showing
Right.
interest in you.
And anytime that I did show that concern, when my mom's marriage, well, when she told me it was falling apart, separate instances, I would give advice. One time I just text her back and I'm like, call the police.
Right.
But she
Right.
didn't want my advice. She just wanted someone to talk to, or someone to show concern, I should say. She had lots of people to talk to. She just didn't. And I've come to learn, felt that I owed her for everything that she's done in my life. In her mind, I've learned also that, like, in her mind, she was exempt from ever having to say she was sorry for doing something, because she was the parent. That meant that she didn't have to say that she was sorry. Also, like, once a conversation was over, it in her mind never happened. Such as like the story with the screw in my brother's face.
She's like, that's over. We don't need to discuss that.
She probably won't remember ever us having that conversation, just because I've learned that people who are narcissistic or emotionally immature, their brains are wired differently.
Yeah.
They cannot remember that they've told you a lie. They can't remember the lie that they told you.
Right.
Like, I have called her out on so many things, and she's just, no, that never happened.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, but and it's a cycle too, I find, an exhausting cycle of that. So I found myself setting boundaries. The boundaries would be met for a good couple weeks, maybe a month or two, and then she would revert right back into the previous behavior. And so I'd set the boundary again. It'd be good for a couple weeks. And then, we're just constantly going through this cycle. And I think it was at the point, like, when your dad just gave you a straight up answer. I confronted my mom when I was about 30. When you're going through that awesome midlife crisis.
Yeah. Is this really where I want to be?
And you just want, right? No, I'm having a midlife crisis now, but I had a little one in my 30s where I was just like, I'm going to get over all of this crap. I'm going to move on with my life. I'm going to find a way to be happy. And this was part of that. I sat her down. We were in the middle of Cedar City, in the middle of Utah. We had just got back from a trip to Bryce Canyon.
Okay.
And so it was just the two of us. And I literally couldn't run anywhere after it because she was driving the 200 miles home. And I sat her down and I confronted her about the physical abuse that my brother and I had suffered. And her immediate answer was, your brother got it worse.
Oh dear.
And I think it was at that moment I realized I was fighting a losing battle.
Yeah.
Like, that I just couldn't keep putting myself and my husband and my kids through trying to make this work. So I 100% believe that it's instinctual for kids to want to have relationships with their parents.
Yeah, I felt that.
Even after all the hurt and all the bad things. So it was hard, but I did summon the courage to just finally delete and block and then delete her number. And I have not regretted that choice. And as I mentioned, my stepdad passed away a couple years ago, and my brother is the one who told me. And I reached out. I did. I gave
to show concern.
So that's
what she would want.
Yep. I said I was sorry for your loss, and she took that opportunity to unload years worth of grievances against me, all in like 4 huge paragraphs.
Oh dear.
And so I know that if I go back to playing that role of her daughter, I'll just be putting myself back in that really exhausting cycle.
Yeah. I really think that's a key word right there. As we're trying to identify whether we're dealing with narcissistic parents, that keyword cycle.
Yeah.
So what else would you say you learned during this time away from your mom?
Honestly, I've had to come up with a mantra.
Okay.
Mantra?
Either way.
One of those. So there was quite a while where we were having face-to-face conversations instead of text message before I deleted and blocked her. And I just had to repeat the same word over and over and over in my head, and that was detach. Just detach, detach, detach. And that's in this book.
Okay.
That I
It's
really
one of
love.
the tools.
It's one of the tools. So that's where I got the idea, is just to, I cannot let myself get emotionally involved, emotionally have any expectations. I can't let her manipulate my reactions, things like that. So
Right.
it was just even while she was talking, I'm just thinking detach, 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 detach. Because I didn't want to play into
That
her need for
instinctual.
intention
Yes.
and the instincts to try to make this relationship work. I didn't want that anymore.
Mhm.
So I highly recommend that as a tool. I've also learned that she actually did play favorites between me and my brother, who's 11 months
Okay.
younger than me. And I learned that it's because they were on the same maturity level.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness.
he and she had this really close relationship when I was growing up, and I felt like the outcast. I was the oldest. Had no expectations of me. I just did what
Hmm.
I wanted and got really good grades so I could get far, far, far away.
That was gonna be your path out.
Yeah.
Of
But they had this really close relationship. She babied him a lot more. And after reading this book, I learned it's because they were on the same maturity level.
yeah.
And so she felt understood by him and he felt understood by her.
And that probably in some sense stunted his growth in order to
100%.
preserve that relationship.
100%.
Yeah.
What I'm coming to find now is he's where I was and when I turned 30. He's at the point now where he's like, this was not healthy. I don't remember my childhood. That's a big problem.
Right. And a red flag.
And a red flag.
Like you said, as a traumatic response, we tend
Right.
to push things out, forget things. So if you just aren't remembering things, that's an
Exactly.
indication things were
Yeah.
traumatic.
And just things that she says to him now, he's like, what is wrong with her? Like, he honestly asked me this question a couple of weeks ago. He's like, does she have multiple personality disorder? Because she acts one way, but she does something different with me. And so I'm like, you know what? I don't know. I don't care. Can't care. Don't.
Right.
Nope.
Right. Detached.
Right. And kind of like what we said, that her brain is physically wired differently. You know, she can't remember if she lied, what the lie was, things like that. So, and then we're never going to have the relationship that we hope for.
Yeah.
Or that I hope for. Nope, it's not happening.
Yeah. So going back to our hook question then, after everything we've discussed and recognizing the traps we can fall into, how do you have a relationship with an emotionally immature parent?
So hard.
Yeah.
I recommend just research as much as you can.
Okay.
There's this book that we mentioned, The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. That just the introduction, I felt so heard, so seen. I did not feel lonely anymore.
That's great.
After that, but there are more books on this topic. I recommend reading them by like psychologists, you know, people who've actually studied this.
Yeah, because it is a psychological thing.
And then we also, I mean, whether we want to admit it or not, narcissists, having a relationship with a narcissist or an emotionally immature parent is a toxic relationship. It is one-sided.
Yeah.
We are constantly being disregarded, criticized, things like that. And we did a Momversation on that a few weeks ago. So we highly recommend going back and watching that one if you want more information there.
I'm glad that you refer back to the other Momversations. I think that's helpful for people to kind of connect dots because we only have so long.
Right.
I think it's also really helpful if you can find somebody else who's going through the same thing.
Yes.
And realize that you aren't alone in this. It is more common than you realize. And so if you feel like you're just alone in it and you feel like you're fighting a losing battle, reach out and find somebody who can support you.
Yes, I like a friend or like my best friend, her mom was a narcissist and a therapist. It's still, I've known for like 3 years, but it still just gets me every time I verbalize it.
Because
And
it seems
so-
dichotomous,
Yes.
like paradoxical.
Right.
I cannot be a therapist and a
And
narcissist.
a narcissist, and she doesn't know that she's a narcissist.
Oh,
But we've had many great, just soul deep healing conversations,
That's
just by having
that in
just
common.
yeah, it's amazing. And even you and me with our dads,
Yeah.
that's just so healing. And like I said earlier, just reading the personal stories in this book, there's probably like a dozen, maybe 18, 20 stories about women like me who have young kids, women like you who have amazing lives, and they are dealing with these emotionally immature parents. And I can look at them and say, I went through that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't the only one. And that was nice. But I think the first thing and probably the best thing you can do is what we've both done since we got our answers.
Yeah.
Is just to emotionally detach, have no expectations that this relationship will be what we want it to be, what it deserves to be, honestly. Like, you deserve to have a loving parent who is there for you, who can empathize with you, who can have a conversation with you without just becoming the victim all the time. But you deserve that, but you're not going to get it.
From those bio parents anyways, or stepdads or things like that. As soon as you've been able to recognize this continuous cycle over a period of years in a myriad of ways, it might be time to look for someone else to fill that void. And
or become that person for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Being able to become your own parent.
I'm my own mom.
Right. Yeah.
I'm mom myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would highly recommend do your research, learn what you can do in your specific situation on how to detach and release some of those expectations that you've put on yourself. It doesn't mean that you stop loving or caring for them. Like I've mentioned, I miss my mom.
Yeah.
I miss the person that I built her up to be in my head when I was younger. But as an adult, I know that she's just not ever going to be that person. I still care if she dies,
right,
or if she gets in a car accident, or if she needs something. She won't ask me.
Yeah.
It just means that you're protecting yourself and you're protecting your family.
That negative cycle.
Yeah. So,
well, we're out of time for this portion where just Natasha and I are talking. So it's time to move into the part where you get to join the Momversation. We hope that you got something out of today's Momversation, and we'd love to hear if you have experience with emotionally immature or narcissistic parents. You can come on Facebook. It's at Mom of 8. Instagram is at Mom of 8 Moms. You can also sign up for our weekly Smile newsletter, which is that's like we use the theme of the Momversations to kind of help us send out a smile.
in today's newsletter.
How many narcissists does it take to screw in a light bulb?
One for to screw in the light bulb and the rest of the world to revolve around them.
So
thank you to our viewers and to the behind the scenes friends at Win-Win Women who make it all possible. That's hard to say. Win-Win Women who make it all possible to care and connect and collaborate in this unique way.
We're going to stop our recording and start our live interaction with our viewers. So if you've watched this on Roku or as a recording, be sure to catch our live show every Saturday. Starting next Saturday, we are going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It's through winwinwomen.tv website. So that way you can participate in this second half hour where we continue the conversation directly with you. So if you'd like a text reminder, you can send a text to 81010 and just type in the @ and the word Mom of 8.
Yep. And we want to include you in our Mom of 8 community. So please stick around and join in on the conversation. Momversation.
That's right.
Momversation.
Momversation.